Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Planet CHH, and we've got a really cool video for you guys today. And I want this video to, if it's anything like the Twilight Time video we did, we got some really great information. And, I'm hoping we might be able to crack the code on this whole situation as well. But first, let me introduce my guest. You've seen him before. You know him. I want to thank Garrett from Born to be Red for giving me some of his time tonight. Garrett, how are you doing tonight, man?
Good, man. How are you doing, man? Thank you for having me back on again. I love when we do these little retrospectives. Super fun, brings back a ton of nostalgia in the early collecting days. So I'm always down to talk about some old school stuff with you.
Yeah, and you really are the perfect guy for this. So whenever I had this idea to talk about this movie, Dawn of the Dead, I was like, this. I knew there was one person that I needed to get with, and which was you. So look, the title of this video, Garrett, is something akin to basically the rise and fall of Dawn of the Dead on home video and why it's no longer coming out. And I did a little bit of research. I obviously don't have a matter of fact answer, but I found an article that I haven't heard people talk about before with information with the name Richard Rubenstein, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I want to talk about that now. We can kind of talk about that at the end. But look, I get messages every now and again about this movie, probably 4 or 5 times a month. Christian, I want Dawn of the Dead on home video, but that nice set's gone. Should I get second sight? I've seen you have some German Blu-rays and steelbooks. Should I grab that? Et cetera, et cetera. And it really it's a difficult thing to answer because even some of the stuff overseas, when you find out about that, it's already out of print. I mean, there's a number of titles overseas that I look at and they're gone. So the purpose of this video is I want to look at the history, or at least a lot of the history of Dawn of the Dead on home video, which I know you have a number of cool releases, how rich that history really is, and how as we go towards the higher formats, it starts to dwindle. And the whole Richard Rubenstein thing. And the purpose of showing the physical media, Garrett, I really think some people they're just sick and tired of hoping and waiting for something nice to come out. So if we show something that catches their eye, maybe they can go online and try to start looking for it, because I get it. People are sick and tired of waiting. And honestly, when you say Richard Rubenstein out loud, horror fans get kind of mad. And I don't know if he's the enemy or not. Like I said, I'm going to read this segment of an article at the end of the show. We'll talk about this at the end, but I'm assuming you've been buying Dawn of the Dead for a long time. I'm guessing you started buying this movie like 2004 or 5.
Yeah, man. I my first time I ever owned Dawn of the Dead was on VHS. Unfortunately, the original one that I had, I have sold. I sold it in like 2008, along with like 90% of my VHS collection, which I've said before is like one of the biggest things I regret as a collector. It was one of those times where I was still living at home. I had like limited space, and I had all these VHS collection taking up shelf space, and I had all these DVDs on the floor because I was really heavily converting into DVDs. So I was like, I need this shelf space. I need to get this off the floor. It's looking ridiculous in here. So I decided I was going to sell these VHS off. Primarily the ones that I had on DVD, I was going to sell off. And then I kept like some of the real big, like sentimental ones that I had as a kid, or, the big 3 franchise and stuff like that. I kept a lot of that. Dawn of the Dead happened to go, and I regret it now. And I don't remember who did the VHS, but it was like it was a different artwork. It was like almost like a yellowy orange, and it said Dawn of the Dead in green. That was the edition that I had. And then I ended up picking up this Anchor Bay VHS. So this is the first kind of item that I have to showcase today, is this clamshell Anchor Bay. They did some VHS back in the day as well. And I do have, and I could not find it, but I am almost positive if I do a little more digging. I thought I had another VHS they did that was a 2-disc, like a 2-tape VHS. But this is the only one that I have displayed currently, and I'm trying to see when this came out. I don't know, 1999 this came out on VHS. And this is funny because this is the anniversary edition director's cut. It's pretty cool little I love this like kind of artwork that they did here, like this almost rainbow type of cool looking aesthetic. That we're going to see that again later when it comes to DVD. But I always thought this was a real cool edition. And this is the image that was on the old VHS that I had.
Old VHS, yeah.
Yeah, that when I was younger. So this is the first one I would say probably.
Is this a Suncoast tape?
Did I buy it at Suncoast?
Right, right.
Probably not. I didn't buy a lot at Suncoast, man, because it was always so expensive. So I always went to Suncoast and got ideas of what I wanted and then bought it elsewhere. The only thing I do remember buying at Suncoast was that damn Boogeyman documentary. That's the one thing I do
That
I do
piece of
remember, and I think I paid like an arm and a leg for it at the time, and I was like, "But I gotta see this. Look at this is gonna be so sick." And then
right.
when I got home, I was like, "I'll never buy from there again." You know.
You know what kills me
Uh,
about that, Garrett? When I did that video on that documentary, so many people were like, "I can't help but love it." I can't I'm like, "Really?"
I mean, you
Like
know what? You kind of have to go back and have a little bit of like, nostalgia with it in the sense that it was such a kind of a big deal at the time because nobody really knew otherwise. We weren't really like familiar with documentaries, right? So that seemed as like, what we got now, with all the documentaries out, that thing's just craziness. But at the time, we weren't really, open to having a ton of horror related documentaries to our at our fingertips. So I think that kind of was like at the time, like it is what it is kind of what we're getting.
who got you
But
no, I think you've talked about this, Garrett. Your
mm,
uncle got you into horror movies, right?
oh yeah. Hmm.
So tell me about
So
your relationship with Dawn of the Dead. I mean, is the first time you see that at with him on
oh yeah.
TV?
It was with him. It's actually one of his all-time favorite movies. So that was one that he showed me very early, and the whole mall aesthetic. Obviously, to me, I know a lot of people are more at this point. I always thought everybody loved Dawn the most, but I feel like Day's really gotten a lot of love lately. But Dawn for me is still my number one Romero. I did a Romero ranking on my channel, and Dawn of the Dead was number one because it was so special to me, and I think the whole aesthetic of the mall just really made me fall in love with it, and
Mhm.
as well too, my uncle's love for it really got me to love it too. So that was a big deal as well. I have like a original one sheet and stuff for the movie. Like, I mean, it's just one of those movies. It's my favorite zombie movie of all time. So when this thing came out on any format, I was pretty much buying it.
And was this before so this your love for this movie really predates becoming a physical media collector in a sense? Like, you love the movie so much that just getting stuff for it you were collecting Dawn of the Dead before you were collecting home video. Is that a fair statement?
Um, I mean, I think it was all kind of in the same time. Like my uncle really got me into like he really kickstarted the craze of collecting. Like he gave me a lot of his VHS tapes. So that's where that Dawn of the Dead came from. So, I was collecting horror VHS at first for a while. And then, DVD format kind of hit the scene and him and I were kind of collecting VHS at the time, but I was mostly just getting a lot of hand-me-downs. Like he'd get better versions, he'd give me the ones that he didn't need anymore. And then when DVD hit, like we both got into it together. So it was one of those things that was super fun for me because he's like my dad's younger brother. So he's, we're a little bit closer in age than him and my father. So we really loved horror. He got me into it. So every Tuesday we'd look at the ad, Circuit City, Best Buy, and I'd be like, all right, what do we want? And then I think at the
Uh-huh.
time I was probably driving. I was probably around 16. So I used to go every Tuesday and I would just pick up, he'd give me a list and he'd give me money. He said, all right, here, get me this. And then, for you doing this, I'll pay for one for you or whatever. So it was cool. And we did that for such a long time, like while I was in high school and stuff. And that really kind of kickstarted it for me with the DVD stuff. But with Dawn of the Dead, like we were both just grabbing everything that came out. And like you said, coming into the show, it's like it's so weird to me that this has been so long since we've got an edition here in the US because Dawn of the Dead was so plentiful for years.
For
Like
years.
Anchor Bay, like I'm going to show you stuff right now. Like I don't even have
Right.
one of the Anchor Bay DVDs. Like I said, I think I do have a double tape Anchor Bay VHS somewhere. Um, I have 4 Anchor Bay DVDs right here. I have 1 Anchor Bay Blu-ray. Like, I mean, this thing was coming out all the time back then. So
Right.
it's just
That's what's
wild that
so
it just
crazy. Yeah.
stopped.
It's like yeah, it's like the Vinnie Vincent of, like, movies. It was there, and it was people were into him, and then boom, he disappeared, and it's
Mhm.
fascinating, and it's the hardest thing about being a movie collector. So, we looked at your rainbow. What's the deal with the rainbow? Is it just I mean, is there something gay about Dawn of the Dead that I didn't never pick up? I'm not saying that
No,
jokingly,
no, no,
like,
no.
Nightmare 2 is obviously gay, you know?
I don't know. I really don't. And maybe somebody that's watching this has a better idea of why this was like that. But I'm going to show you a DVD that came out, which I always kind of found fascinating. This also came in '99, and you wonder if this came out together. And this is the DVD anniversary edition, and you see how it's got the same kind of color pattern. Now, what's interesting is you look at these two, like the DVD, these both came out in 99, the VHS, but what's interesting is this is the anniversary edition and it's the theatrical cut, and this is the director's cut on VHS. So very odd that they split them, but then in two different formats. So that's what's kind of interesting as well, is that it came out at the same time. It's got the same kind of color, but this is the director's, this is the theatrical. So very interesting. And it's not like it had options for both on here. So I don't know what the whole rainbow thing was, but I just love it because it's just so different. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a very different take on like this. And if anybody knows why they did that, I would love to know, because it's the only time I've ever seen that. So that's what's kind of interesting is during those releases. But yeah, I don't know why they did that, because
when did you get that
we-
the DVD? I mean, I'm sorry. Did you
man,
get that?
I
in
had
99?
yeah, I had to have got this when it came out in 99. But what's interesting is there's actually a DVD that came out before both of these that I didn't realize. This came out in, I think,
Really
97. This is
Good
the Anchor,
times?
this must be the Anchor Bay, original Anchor Bay. This is
See,
the
that's the perfect color pattern for that, with the purple Dawn
and
of the
orange.
Dead. Yeah.
And I believe the double tape that I have is this cover, I think. But this is the director's cut. So you get the
And what
director's
year
cut on
is that?
DVD. 97.
That's like the second
Oh,
year
yeah.
of DVD.
This had to have been their first, I'm assuming the first DVD release. It has to be. Then in
That would be the
99 you
title
got
to launch on that format with.
oh
You
yeah.
know, Dawn of the
Yeah.
Dead or Halloween.
Collector's
One of the
edition.
two.
Boom. I'm sure Halloween was early too. I'd have to go look, but yeah, I'm actually pretty shocked this was 97.
Garrett, let me just for a second. Doesn't the DVD just feel perfect in the hands? It's the perfect size. It's the perfect weight.
I love it, dude. I really do. It's like starting to kind of really come back into nostalgia for me. As far as the aesthetic of it, like
Can we see the disc if you don't mind?
Yeah.
On that release.
This is it's just blank.
It takes me back. Did Anchor Bay ever do snapper cases that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think they did. I mean, they could have, but not that I'm aware of. But this is pretty rad too.
Yeah, let's see that. What does that say? When there's no room in hell, that's like a mini poster.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
You got the scene index on the other side?
This has got that's what it has on the other side.
Gotta love that. Whatever happened to the scene indexes, Garrett?
I don't know, man. But I like the purple. That's pretty cool.
That's great. See, they must have been selling so well to reissue. You got to imagine too, it was a new license they probably have a license for X period of time on an X format for the X cut of the movie. I think that's all extremely specific. And it might have been a decision to say, okay, we can license the unrated cut or the director's cut. They'll license the director's cut cheaper to us on VHS, and we can get a cheaper rate for the theatrical cut on DVD. I'm sure it's very specific down to the bone for these licenses. You know,
it's very interesting. And there's actually another DVD that I'm not sure where the time frame falls here that I don't own, and it's the Argento cut, and it actually says zombie on it, ZOMBI, and it says underneath, it says Dawn of the Dead's Argento cut, and that was a DVD from Anchor Bay as well, which I don't have. And when you wanted to do this show, a part of me went on eBay and was like, let me see if I can complete this thing. So I found a couple on eBay. I just don't know what year that fell. Part of me feels like it kind of came out probably after these two, but I could be wrong, because it is a little bit of a jump before we get the next one.
If I could, since we're kind of going in a time frame, this is 1996.
Oh,
this
wow.
is the
director's.
Yeah, what's interesting, so Elite Entertainment was kind of like the Arrow or Anchor Bay of Laserdisc, but for it being 1996, it was still under the Anchor Bay license as well. So they were in conjunction. Like I said, director's cut. And I know that there were different cuts for Dawn of the Dead on Laserdisc as well. I think they probably ran the gambit. This is at the time when this came out, this was like the absolute premier way to see Dawn of the Dead. Widescreen letterboxed, the way George wanted the aspect ratio, because the directors had control. They gave the directors autonomy over these laser discs. They let them basically release it the way they put it out in the theater, and they made sure of that. And a lot of my George Romero ones says supervised by George and that sort of thing. So yeah, so this was a very expensive, very, very expensive release. And as a matter of fact, it's such a long movie, it's on 2 laser discs. So
Wow, that's really
yeah.
cool, man.
Yeah, I got this at Texas Frightmare in 2015. And I think I paid $30 for it, which is probably very, very cheap compared to what it goes for now. But
Mhm.
since we're kind of going in a timeline, I wanted to
Yeah,
jump in
yeah,
with
yeah, no
that.
problem. That's
And
awesome.
yeah, it's gorgeous. I wish it was the purple, but it's white.
Now, have you looked up the different if there was other variants and variations
Yeah,
and cut?
there's an even nicer version of Dawn of the Dead on Laserdisc that's like in this thick black, heavy duty case that I think is it's got I think it has a documentary. At the time, it was the most extended version. If I remember to, I'll put a picture of this on as an overlay after the fact
Mhm.
of recording this. And that came out either at the same time of this or a little right after, at the very, very tail, because this was literally the last gasp of Laserdiscs. 96 is when this came out, and it really died in America in 99. So the other release, the heavy duty super release, probably came out in 96 or 97. And those go I remember even in 2011 when I wanted to buy that, it was very, very, because people weren't selling their Dawn of the that's something
Right.
about Dawn of the Dead, like, especially on Laserdisc, nobody was selling theirs. Like, it's crazy how there are some titles with these formats that, like, when people, like, say, "Oh, Imma get rid of all this, Imma get rid of all this," it was Jaws and Dawn of the Dead, they wouldn't sell. People would hold on to their releases of those 2 movies. I could get the Halloweens, no problem. I can get the Friday 13th were difficult, but Dawn, I literally had to find it at a convention and get lucky because I could never find it. And when I did, it was very expensive. So, and I remember watching this when I got it. It was gorgeous. Really, really good release.
Don't you think that there's always like, and I think, yeah, I'm sure everybody has their different set of movies, but when I look at my collection, like you're gonna see all these editions I have, and there was always a handful of movies that I always bought no matter what. Like, I talk about it now and double dipping, triple dipping, and how it's kind of gotten annoying, through the years. But look at, like, I was doing it. We were all doing it way back then. Like, this is so many Dawns that I kept and held on to. I didn't sell them away. I think it was just like, it just seems more trendy now to kind of buy the same thing over and over again. But back then, I don't know what it was. There's certain movies, this Evil Dead, Exorcist, these are movies that I constantly bought all these different editions for. And, I didn't sell too many of them. Some I did, and we'll talk about that soon. But more or less, I kind of kept some of these hanging around just because of the nostalgia purposes. And, being such an Anchor Bay guy, I made sure I never sold any of my Anchor Bay stuff. But it's just kind of interesting that, I look back on it and I was like, wow, I just kept buying Dawn over and over and over again. But there's something about that movie. It's always one that I'm gonna jump on. And it's just, again, kind of crazy to see that it was so plentiful for so long, and now it's just kind of dormant, in some sense.
Remind me, we just looked at your 97 DVD. What
Mhm.
cut was that?
That was director's cut on DVD, and then
Okay,
in
so that might be
'99,
why. That might be why they went theatrical in 99,
well, then they did,
right?
yes, and then they did theatrical in '99, and then they did it in '99. This VHS clamshell, the directors. So
Right.
directors,
So
theatrical
that
here is
could have
first.
something else to do with it. If
Yeah,
that
and
was
they
the
did.
first DVD release of Dawn of the Dead, that is.
It's
If that was
gotta be. I'm pretty sure it
there's only
was.
there's only 1 year before where DVD really became a household. I say household. It really didn't catch on till 2000 or 2001 when PS2 came out, right?
Mhm.
I mean, most people were still rocking VHSs in 97, 98. My family sure was,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
you
I
know?
just kinda got into the format of DVD, but I mean, more or less, it was still VHS was the hot commodity, even at video stores. They hadn't totally transferred over yet at
Right.
that point. Um, but yeah, that was kind of that era, and, like I said, there was this Dario Argento zombie cut. I don't know where that fell. I'm assuming it probably fell here because The next Anchor Bay DVD that I have came out in 2004. So that's a big jump. And that's this Divimax edition. It's like gold. Okay, so that's the one you have. Now, I'm looking at the back because I don't remember, like, what cut is this?
You know what? It's
Because, I mean, is it
probably,
extended? Is it theatrical?
if it doesn't
don't
say,
know.
you got to imagine it's the theatrical.
And it doesn't say that there's different cuts on here. It says widescreen presentation.
It's got to be theatrical. Now, this DTS, was this a big deal at the time?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I didn't really, that kind of stuff didn't matter to me, just based on my setup and stuff like that. But I just saw Dawn again, and I was like, well, the picture maybe because it was so far years ahead of what I had last, I was like, maybe the picture's gonna look better. So, and It's got this cool kind of like not lenticular, but almost like this like shiny foil like cover. So I was like, all right, let me get that and see. And I don't really remember what the differences were at that time.
I was trying to look for a runtime on it to because so my story with this was in 2011, 12, I think it was 13. I wanted to watch Dawn of the Dead, and I don't think streaming was really a thing yet besides Netflix in 2013. And I remember going to a game exchange, which are popping up all over the country now, and they had a used DVD section, and I bought this blissfully for $4.95, and then I didn't realize up until a few years later that the Blu-ray was either right out at that time or just went out of print. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure this goes for probably $60 online right now, maybe 50, 60 if I had to guess. I could be a little high on that. But I blissfully got it for $5, and this was the edition that I watched for a very, very long time, and it served me well. I was very happy with it, but I got to imagine it's theatrical. I have to imagine, but it's been quite some time. It's probably been 6-7 years since I've used this release. But yeah, this got me through when I wanted to watch it conveniently and not having to use my Laserdisc.
Okay.
So,
Oh, yeah. So it says here, I can see it now with the light. Anchor Bay is proud to present the thrilling theatrical version of Romero's masterpiece, now featuring a new high-definition Divimax transfer, remastered. So it was the theatrical, but obviously, so it was remastered. It was an upgraded transfer from what we had before.
yeah, that Divimax was a thing for a while, too. I think they did maybe a Halloween and some other things with that. But I mean, I can attest here, too. This was a when I first got this, I just thought this was a great release.
Oh yeah,
and
it was the edition I watched for a long time when I got this one.
Yeah, it's got 5.1, 2.0, and the original mono soundtrack, which is on Laserdisc. They love using the mono soundtrack because even though it's a disc, it's still an analog format, and so there was zero compression. It was like listening to vinyl. So when you listen to Laserdisc, man, it would rock the house. There was highs and lows in the audio, so it had almost like a real sound, like a realistic sound to it. Not the way some stuff does nowadays in DVDs where everything is squished. So I don't know if it makes a difference on this. Maybe if you have a good system, but yeah, this was a great release. I never sell my stuff, so I never even thought about it. So, but yeah, the sticker's warm, but yeah, $4.95. So I was very lucky to have that, because if I didn't, man, I would have been up Shit's Creek trying to watch Dawn of the Dead on disc.
Well, then, did you get the next big release from Anchor Bay? It was like the kind of the end all be all.
Release, I think it came and went, but I wasn't privy. This is going back to like the Twilight Time era. You were aware and you were in the know. Garrett, I didn't get in the know up until about 2016 on actually knowing when
you were going back and getting stuff, basically, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well,
finding your favorite movies and being like, okay, where can I get this and what version?
Yeah, yes and no, because before that it was going to FYE and going to Walmart. The idea of release dates was non thing for me. It was literally just show up and just what's going to be there this time. I was going in so blissfully for so many years. It wasn't until Creepshow 2 from Arrow that I started learning, okay, we can learn about release dates. There are websites that let people know about stuff. So I was collecting, but I was ignorantly collecting. It was like randomly showing up to Walmart and, oh God, look at that. Look what's in store now. That's how I was. So I missed out on the Blu-ray for this movie. Didn't even know it came out.
Well, there was one edition, and I'm almost positive I can't find a date on it, that came out, I think after 2004. So this came out in 2004 as well. It might have been a little later, man, but this was like so freaking mind blowing. I can still remember going to the store and getting this, and like I said, I bought one for me. I got one for my uncle. So 2004, I was a little bit older at that point, so um, I had enough, income to support that. And like I said, he would always pay me back and whatnot. So I just say I got to go get the Dawn, and it was this Anchor Bay Ultimate Edition of Dawn.
Oh wow.
This was honestly like the best edition ever made. It's called the Ultimate Edition. And what was cool about this one, it was the first time ever you got all the different cuts. You got theatrical cut with commentary with a bunch of features. You got disc 2 extended version features, disc 3 European version, and then disc 4 was documentaries. So you did have a bunch of stuff, and they also had on here was Document of the Dead documentary. So this was like the most badass. When they announced this, it was like unreal. And on the side here, you kind of have like the logo. Now, what's cool about this? You pop this out, you got that.
Mm.
You got this dude on the back, and then this thing folds out. I don't know if you can see it good here,
We see it pretty good.
but check
That's
how cool
gorgeous.
that is out. You got a little comic in there. You got the discs there, and then
Was this a Best Buy pickup that you got?
this probably was Best Buy at the time, yeah. But I mean, this was just so unreal, like at the time, that this was Flyboy.
Oh
Um,
man, it's
this was such a
gorgeous.
great addition, and there was a point in time where I was like, they're never going to top this unless they mimic it. Basically, that was my biggest thing. Was like, if they can mimic this in a higher format, like that's the best. But this is honestly like one of my favorite editions. I'll never get rid of this. And this actually kind of hung around for a little bit, where it was super pricey at the beginning, but then as Blu-ray started to come out, you started to go to FYE and seeing this on sale for like $25. It was a
Crazy.
steal at one point right before maybe it wasn't FYE. Maybe I'm thinking of like there was another place that was it was called Strawberries near me that turned into an FYE. So maybe it was like a place like that that came out, but that was also in 2004. And as far as I know, that's the last time we ever saw Dawn of the Dead on DVD, because it was almost like, all right, here's the finishing touch. What more can you ask for? It's got documentaries and it's got all the cuts on here. So that was like the end all be all. And like I said, all those editions that I've showed so far were Anchor Bay. So keep that in mind.
They did as much on Dawn as they did Halloween.
Yeah, that
Maybe
Halloween and Dawn
more.
and Evil Dead were like the big three, I think, for them.
Hmm.
They did a lot of stuff with those three.
Did they not? Why didn't they do a 10 for Dawn of the Dead?
Good question. I don't know.
Seems like a home run.
It does, yeah. I'm not sure why, but that's it. That
Not
would
that
have been
not that
interesting
those
if they did.
tins were actually that great, if I'm being dead honest. They
I
came in
mean,
a
they're
CD case with a piece
yeah.
of paper.
Oh yeah, like I mean, I have so much love for them, because at the time it was like when you saw those things, you're like, "What is this? Why? This is so crazy that they would come. These movies would come in cases like this." So, of course, I had to get all of them. So they do hold a lot of nostalgia for me. But like you said, they're a little awkward, right? Like I have mine standing on my shelf, but they barely balance up there. So it
Mine,
wasn't the easiest way to display
yeah,
them.
I bought mine at FYU's, and all of them look like Donkey Kong punched them. They're
Do
all
they
dented to
really?
shit. Ugh.
I have a couple signed. I have my Evil Dead one signed by Bruce Campbell, and my Maniac one is signed by Bill Lustig. So I got them signed. I was getting them signed for a while, and then I stopped that.
Oh man. Well, Garrett, let's go down memory lane a little bit more. What format do we have next for Dawn of the Dead? So we cap off the DVD. We kind of go out. We kind of go out with Off into the Sunset with
Oh
the
yeah,
DVD releases.
100%. That was 2004. Like you said, like I said before, it was like when that came out, there was like no better edition. I'm surprised I didn't sell off all my Dawn of the Deads at that point, because it's like, why'd I need them? But in 2007, Anchor Bay, shifted over to Blu-ray, and sure enough, boom, they
That's
released
it.
Dawn right on Blue.
Shit. It's an
Um,
expensive Blu-ray.
yeah, and who would have thought, right? Like, who would have ever thought? Because the only thing I knew was, oh, they're gonna start doing Dawns again, and maybe they'll do the big box set, maybe they'll do the director's cut, because this was just again going back to the theatrical. It was upgraded. So I had to get it because I wanted to see what this thing looked like in HD for the first time. So little did I know that this thing was going to be, it's very similar to the one me and you have for the DVD version. It's just very similar. It's just upgraded to HD. So as far as all the features and stuff, same. But yeah, this is an early one. It's even got other things beyond high definition. It's got that little thing on the top.
Yeah. I was gonna
But
say, I mean, it looks pretty not bare bones,
yeah,
like literally, but like I think the gimmick of that is the fact that it was Blu-ray because it was so new, and that banner at the top lets you know everything you need to know because that is a sign of an early release Blu-ray
yep.
with that beyond high definition.
Oh yeah. So this was kind of like one of their first early Blu-rays. This and Day did come out from them early on.
Did you remember that blowing you away when you first watched on Blu-ray, or?
I do, because it was such a upstep from DVD
Yeah.
that I really did notice such a big difference. But what I just didn't realize how important this was going to be when it came to Dawn of the Dead and its legacy from here. Because then we start to get into a little bit of rocky waters where is this thing and why have we not seen it and why hasn't Scream Factory put it out yet? Like, there's been so much that went through my head after this thing was released because, man, this was 2007. Think about how long ago that was. It's crazy to
A
think
lifetime ago.
that was that long ago. And there was another edition on Blu-ray that came out after this, which I had and I sold. Because in my head, I'm like, well, I have this one. This one's selling for boatloads of money. And I know for a fact we're going to see Dawn of the Dead sooner than later because I think Scream Factory just announced Day. So I'm like, that's coming. It's coming. And that was the early Arrow Video Blu-ray. I was collecting Arrow Video really early, right out of the gate. They were Region B. Some of them, I think Dawn was actually all Region. And I'm sure you've seen it. They used to all come in like a
Does it have
white
a cutout
case
in the middle?
Yes. So it had a cutout in the middle. And what the gimmick was you took it out, it was like a white case, and then there was so many different artworks that you could choose. So no matter, you had two on each side, and then you could flip them, and there would be two more on each side. And then however you put them in the thing, you could have different covers. Basically, that would fit inside that window. It was actually a pretty cool concept. Exactly, that's the one. Yeah. So I sold that. When after Scream Factory announced Day, I was like, you know what, I'm going to sell my Dawn, sell my Day, and it was a cool addition, man. Yeah.
That's so cool. I remember people having this when I first got on YouTube, like showing it off in 2012. And
do I wish I still had it? Yeah. But I had a bunch of those white editions and I've sold them all because they were going for good money. And I had the movies in different Blu-rays like Frankenhooker. I had tons of Funhouse. There was a lot of them that I had. But yeah, that Dawn was one that sold for a pretty penny at the time, and I kind of wish I still had it just for collector's purposes. But because it's early, that was like wave one of Arrow, so that was huge.
Right. It's crazy how even in like Europe they're having trouble with Dawn of the Dead. It seems like it's just not coming out now. They have. I think this one is 5 or 6 years old. It's 2017. And this was actually sent to me by a subscriber, which I'm so grateful for. And this is gorgeous. This is one of those
wow.
XT video.
I don't have that thing. That thing's cool. What is that?
German. 156 minutes. I assume this is, well, I don't know what cut it is. I don't remember. I watched it, but I don't remember the differences, quite honestly. But this is German with a lenticular cover, and it's actually a really cool steelbook. But again, cool. Limited, complete cut. So this is probably the longest cut there is, the director's cut.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. But really cool. And I did some research on this when I got it. Came and went. It's like when it gets announced, if you don't pre-order it the day of its announcement, you're gonna miss it. It seems like with these damn movies, or with this movie in particular, it's crazy.
So that was the Blu-ray. That was German, and then did it kind of?
They had a number of them out there.
Yeah. Do you remember? And I don't know what the timeline is here, but do you remember there was another 4K that was announced? I think it was 4K. I didn't get it, but it was announced like before we got the Second Sight one, and it was just kind of like a bare bones one that I think was overseas. I can remember the cover, but maybe it said zombie on it or something. It was like black.
I do.
It had like.
Yes, I remember that, and there's also one that was featured as the Argento cut on 4K.
Maybe that
It
is the
was a
one I'm thinking of.
yeah, yeah. I think
You
we were
don't
talking
have
about
that,
the
right?
same thing. No, and quite frankly, that's my favorite cut, to be honest with you, and that's something I'd really love to have on 4K. I don't. I have the second set release, but not the good one. I made a big mistake when
Mhm,
that got
mhm.
announced. I made a big mistake. This is the most biggest regret I have as a collector was not getting the Super Edition.
Well, I mean, if you wanna get into that,
Mhm.
uh, we could talk about that one next because I don't know, if there's anything else between that now. Is there?
Nothing. I feel no. I feel like the only I think for a lot of us, we sat in limbo, like you said, waiting for Dawn to come out from Scream Factory. We all
Mhm.
saw it. It just seemed like such a shoe in. Like, well, you can't even do Scream Factory if you're not Scream Factory unless you guys put out Dawn of the Dead.
Especially because they put out Day, you're like, you're not gonna put out Day and just leave Dawn by itself. Like, they always, to me, kinda went hand in hand through
Of
Anchor Bay,
course.
then to Arrow Video. It was like they were always right side by side. And so it was definitely one that I'm like, oh god, Dawn's next, and that's why I sold off all my those two Arrow ones because I'm like, I was just basically a pre-order day and I was getting ready for the big announcement. It
Mhm.
never happened.
No, and time kept passing, and I don't think a lot of us collectors like me that were really open to the idea of ordering a bunch of stuff overseas. I mean, I think there's a lot of us that were kind of just nervous to do that sort of thing. I know
Mhm.
I was for a long time until finally I said, okay, I can pay $80 for an out of print title, or I can pay 120. And then every time these titles are out of print in America, I can pay 15 for a Region B Blu-ray and eventually save a ton of money with that player. So
Mhm.
I finally did that, but I think a lot of people were not ready to make that leap. And so when it came to Dawn of the Dead and that situation, we were just left stranded in the desert, begging for something to come out. And I never heard the name Richard Rubenstein up until a few years ago, but we'll
Same.
save that for a second. We'll save that for a second. But I think the biggest announcement at the time for Dawn of the Dead that really got major traction was in fact Second Sight. And and I remember when it was announced, everybody was talking about it. Everybody. And they were like, they're putting out the most premium edition. They're giving you every drop of footage. Well, not every drop, that's not true. They're giving you so much material,
Mhm.
loads of material. And I remember it was pandemonium at the time. And this was 2019, maybe 2020,
I would
2019.
say I would say pre-order could have been 2019 because I got that and it was honestly one of my first videos on YouTube was me opening this thing. So it had to have been I started YouTube at I think around Halloween 2020. So it was probably one of my first couple videos. So I mean it had to have I at least got my hands on it at the probably the end of 2020.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking that the pre-order must have been early 2020 perhaps and
Right.
then we just had to kind of wait.
So do you have it right next to you? You just kind of let
Oh yeah.
people see it?
I mean, so I didn't it is probably the best edition that I think that we could ever get. And
It's gorgeous.
it's cool, man. It's so good. It really
You don't have to
resembles that Anchor Bay one.
right.
What you say? I don't have to what take it out of this
You don't
thing?
have to no, you don't have to read the back, just give me the
Oh
bullet
yeah,
points
yeah,
for the top, like, disc 1, what is that? Disc
yeah.
2, disc
UHD
3.
4K theatrical cut, bunch of features. Disc 2 UHD extended cut, a bunch of features. It's got disc 3 the Argento cut, bunch of features. Disc 4 a bunch more special features, a lot of newer ones. You got Document of the Dead, two cuts of Document of the Dead, so it's like original cut and then like a definitive cut. Then you got limited edition contents in this with like the Goblin soundtrack, um, some more CDs, and then a book.
Yeah.
So this really is kind of like
It
the
was a
end all
big
be all
boy.
edition. I don't think that there's anything that we're ever going to get that's going to top this, but I don't know if there's any other way. I mean, if the US gets their hands on it, I'm hoping they kind of mimic this because it seems that this thing came and went. I didn't realize how quick this went because Second Sight just released another Dawn, but I assume it's just kind of partially what's in here, right? Because I don't have that.
Well, right after that announcement, probably 3 months later, they said, "Hey, we're gonna do a slim edition." And so I finally got my head out of my ass, and I was region free, so I got this edition.
Mm.
And this is not even 4K. I mean, it's the new all the new scans and stuff, but this was just I got the Blu-ray version.
Okay.
And it's not bad, but I horribly regret not grabbing the 4K version because I don't think I was 4K at the time, but I knew I was inches away from making that jump. And it's just a bittersweet release. I just look at it and I just look at it and realize I made a horrible mistake.
Well,
Because
we all do, but
that release is insane. It's a trophy. It's almost like a lifetime achievement award release to me. You know what I'm saying? It's just
I really have a hard time figuring out if they could ever replicate that in any way. I mean, the only other thing they could do is if they gave you like a damn zombie head that, you know,
right.
statue like that kind of resembles that damn screwdriver in the eyeball Walking Dead set with all this stuff inside. I don't know what else you do here, but what happens next is TBD. I had heard some rumblings about some possibilities, and then after I kind of heard about that, they announced they were going to do like the it's going to bring it back to the theaters. So I don't know if maybe those rumblings that I heard kind of had to do with that or not, but
Right.
there's a lot of factors right now that are kind of in the works that I would say maybe we could see or hear something soon. But it'll be interesting. I want to kind of see what that article says because I haven't read that.
So yeah, I was gonna say, and I'm not gonna I'm not gonna go too much longer because I think you're supposed to be live right now, Garrett. So
It's all good. I just pushed it 10 minutes.
okay, cool. So I remember hearing Richard Rubinstein out of people's mouths, and a lot of it was negative. He's money hungry. He's a rat son of a bitch. That sort of thing. He wants an exorbitant amount of money for the rights. Now, the simple solution to getting an answer to this is if some of these companies like Scream Factory or Vinegar Syndrome or blah, 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 would actually just come out and say, no, we've tried. Rubenstein's not interested. Rubenstein's not actually the guy. The reality is it's this, or there's multiple hands in the pie and it's a big legal issue.
You would
We have
hope
to wait.
so. You would
You would
hope
hope that
somebody would just
these
come out because
companies,
of
yeah,
course.
these companies don't come out and they don't say this stuff to us. I wish they would, because that transparency would go a long way with their audience. So, I would hear all this negative stuff about Rubenstein. Now, I was doing some research and I want to just read this segment of the article, not the whole thing. During a 2018 interview with Birth Movies Death, Richard Rubinstein discussed his long in the works 3D conversion of Dawn of the Dead, the first 7 minutes of which were shown to George prior to his unfortunate death in 2017. During the conversation, Rubinstein explained he wanted younger audiences to be able to see the film on the big screen and that a 3D version was a way of doing that while also bringing new life to socially conscious horror flicks. Despite a poor response from audiences at the 2016 Beyond Fest, Rubinstein was unperturbed and made it sound like he was going to hold out and hold on to the idea that his 3D version is the way to go. But why does the producer want the 3D version? It's speculated that he sunk a ton of cash, reportedly as much as $6 million, and he wants to make his money back. That can't be confirmed, but until that's worked out, it's hard to say when we'll be able to stream in this article, but also / own Dawn of the Dead on physical media. So my question to you now that I've read that is, do you recall hearing about a 3D theatrical release of Dawn of the Dead, and how serious were the reports that you were hearing about, and how much was people talking? Because this went all over my head. I don't remember any of this in 2017.
Well, there's two things that I definitely heard about it back then. It was just kind of like hearsay, like you said. But I don't know if you remember, but last year, I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, they released Dawn of the Dead 3D in theaters finally. It was out. Yeah, it was like for like a weekend only. I didn't
I
get
don't
to go
remember this.
see it. I heard mixed things about it. People said it wasn't that cool. But as a Dawn of the Dead fan, I would love to get a 3D version Or I would love to see it in 3D. I'm trying to think like how it would even work on the TVs nowadays. You probably couldn't. I mean, I do have a 3D TV still, but
What's another thing? That's kind of like dead
right,
technology in the sense that it didn't catch on. I'm not saying it's not good. Although,
sure.
hey, the PS headset thing for the PlayStation 4,
Mm,
the PlayStation 4 can play Blu-ray 3D. And if you get the VR headset, I've heard a couple people said, Christian, get that. It's
that's
actually
rad,
a
dude.
pretty cool 3D experience. You can't do it all day, otherwise you'll be puking in you'll be vomiting in a bag. But if
Mm,
you watch a movie every once in a while, it's actually kind of cool.
that
But
is
why
cool. I
release
mean,
they can't release it in 2024 on Blu-ray 3D. Who's gonna buy that?
I know. I don't know if it's
Oh, we
just something
will,
where
but
like if yeah, I will, but if this comes out again in a set, maybe they just sneak it in there as like an extra and just say like, if you have access to watch this somehow, do it. But if you look online right now, you'll be able to find the Dawn of the Dead theatrical poster for the 3D. It's got to be on there because, like I said, it was out. And I wanted to see it, but I'm trying to think if they didn't have it near me or what the story was. But um, yeah, it came out I think like last year in the theaters for maybe like just a one weekend type deal, and now I'm hearing that they're going to try to put it back out again in the theaters, but not 3D this time. So who knows? There you go.
exclusive. That's probably why I didn't hear much about it. I don't have a Regal by me.
I do have Regal.
Um,
That's what's interesting. I wonder how I missed it. I don't remember, but I mean, I would love to get that poster to be
but
quite
you know
honest with you.
those oh sure, of course. You know those conversions, Garrett. I don't hear. I saw Star Wars Episode 1 in 3D. They did a conversion, which I'm assuming is the same technology that they did for this. Honestly, I gotta be honest, it was a sack of shit watching that in fake 3D.
Mhm,
You know, because they're not shooting it with those 3D cameras. They're not shooting with 3D in mind, you know, and
mhm.
I think this is a bad idea. I think Rubenstein didn't I think Rubenstein's out of touch to think that that's the way to get kids back into the I hate to say it. I think you just I mean, people are gonna get mad at me. I think you remake the movie again, and then you bring the original back up. As much as I'd hate for it to be remade, that seems to kinda work. Because what happens when all these movies get what's gonna happen with The Crow? They're making this new Crow, and guess what's gonna show up at Walmart and stuff? Brandon Lee T-shirts. Like that this always happens. The
Mhm.
originals get marketed back again in a big way when they
Well, I mean,
remake
you
the
see,
damn movies.
they just announced all those 4Ks so that they know what they're doing, right? Like, they
I
know.
Yeah, so I guess we're gonna wrap it up. I guess the crux of this whole thing is, now that I know this came out in 3D last year, that bums me out because you'd think we would hear something new, but maybe Rubenstein needs another swing at it, this whole thing.
Well, it
Maybe it
is
needs to be
coming back
promoted
again.
bigger.
It is coming back. So take a look. I don't know what the date is, but I mean, I
Well, they
heard
need to get it in
recently that they're
Cinemarks
gonna.
and yeah, they
Yeah,
need
if
to
they
go
were smart,
bigger.
they would do that. I mean, that's how you get the ball rolling. Come back out in a great format. You don't do the 3D thing and see if people go and check it out. And hopefully that's enough to get the ball rolling to get this thing available again on physical media here in the States. But I mean, there's a lot of factors to it. And I do think that you're right. Like some of these companies I wish would come out and just say, listen, we've tried. Here's what's going on. Because maybe that would even give him a little kick in the ass to like just release the thing. And I don't know how it works in overseas, but it seems like Second Sight is getting things that here in the States never were able to.
Yeah.
Picture,
I'm
Dawn.
assuming Rubenstein's control over the movie is statewide.
Mhm.
It has to be, I would assume, because if I just would assume, but again, it's hard for me to say. Last thing I'll say before we wrap up is, you know what I would love, Garrett? You're gonna say, Christian, you're nuts. I want
Oh
them
no.
to do a special one night event of night, dawn, and day.
Oh
And I
dude, I
want to
would love
make
it.
it a big party. I want to go to the theater all day and
Would love
watch
it.
all three of them. I
That'd be
think that'd be
fantastic. I mean,
badass.
what a great event that would be. Like an all night affair. I mean, that would be awesome, man.
Mhm.
And what
Mm.
they could do is they could even set it up to like time it right. So like dawn would be at night. No, it would go night would be at night, and then it fades into dawn, and then goes into day, into
That'd
day.
be
Like so,
cool.
you're watching it like at that time. Yeah.
We need resolution. The horror fans, or more specifically, the dead fans, need resolution. We have an amazing release of Night of the Living Dead on 4K. I recommend
Mhm.
either the 4K version, guys, or if you want to stick with the Blu-ray version, they both look sensational. I think you people would be surprised at how good it looks. And not only is Dawn screwed on 4K, but so is Day. It's not like Day has gotten one either. So we may be in the same boat with Day. We don't know. But Dawn is the one that's really, Day is still available on Blu-ray. That's the difference. Day is still available from Screen Factory. Dawn is completely lost on physical media. And I hope you guys, you know, if anybody has any information out there, please, please, let's get the people talking. You never know what these videos can do. I want to enjoy it the way everybody else wants to, and I want everybody to be able to enjoy it. So hopefully by doing these videos, we spread a little bit of awareness. Maybe Rubenstein can come out and talk about this and give us something. And these movies can come back to where they belong, because everybody should be enjoying these films in high definition. So that's where we'll leave it, I guess, for now. Garrett, I appreciate you hopping on and showing us your collection. And if anybody has any questions on a specific release, if I can't answer it, I'll maybe see if Garrett can check the comments and see if he has an answer to one of the releases he has and that sort of thing. And I understand it for you guys that are sick of waiting. You know, screw it. Go on eBay and get one of them old DVDs. That may be it. You just never know. You know?
But thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I love going back in time and talking about this stuff. It brings me a lot of joy because it brings up a lot of cool memories where something like Dawn of the Dead, it was like so readily available. I remember just being so excited, being like, what's going to be different about this cut, you know, and going to the store and getting it for the first time. So this was awesome, man. Thank you again.
Huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.